Hello and welcome back to the third video of this series. Now before we get into the introduction for this video, I wanted to kind of take care of some housekeeping and let you know that the design recs that I've been doing at the end of the videos, I felt like they're really valuable and I don't want them to get buried at the end of videos. So what I'm going to be doing going forward is having them be separate videos that I'm going to be posting, and they're going to be 2 videos a week now coming on this upcoming week. So with that said, I'm slightly going to be changing the way that I upload, and I just wanted to let you guys know. So this is going to be the last video I do on a Saturday on a continual basis. I am doing one video next week on Saturday, which is sort of a one-off, but going forward, they're typically going to be Mondays and Thursdays, and they're going to be Mondays and Thursday mornings. And the reason that I chose these days is I actually went into the YouTube analytics and saw that that's when my viewers are on most frequently. So on Mondays, we're going to be doing those design rec tip videos, and then on Thursdays, we're going to be doing like these kind of videos where they're more of like design series, so portfolio and this like concept project would be the other main two. So we're going to be starting our next concept project in a few weeks here. So that's what the Thursdays are going to be for. Now this is going to be part 2 of the UX research, or the user research for this concept project for Jira. And as I did last week, I'm going to walk you through each exercise, give you some of the benefits for each, some of the constraints, and walk you through how I went through achieving the deliverable, and hopefully give you some ideas for how you might be able to do so for yourself. So I'll try to do my best to explain, that way you know how to do this exercise going forward. Now in today's video, we're going to be going through the empathy map, the user personas, the user problem statements, and the user flow diagram. Now last week we went through a lot of like stakeholder user research, and this week we're going to be doing more like UX user research. So if you haven't watched the first video, make sure to do so, because both are valuable for very different reasons, but make sure to also watch this one because I think there's going to be a lot of great stuff here for you. All right, so let's talk about the goals from today's research. There are 5 goals. So first, understand our users by analyzing what they see, what they hear, what they say, and what they feel. And we'll do that through the empathy map. Then we're going to understand what motivates and frustrates our users. Also something we're going to be doing with the empathy map. And then we're going to gain a deeper understanding for our 3 primary user personas. So we're going to be building out our user personas. Those are for the product managers, the engineering managers, and the engineers, since those are the 3 primary user personas for Jira. And then what we're going to do is figure out what we should be looking for in the UX UI audit through user problem statements. And lastly, we're going to get a full grasp of the user flows that I want to improve. And just to kind of remind you, I am doing this step by step. So the user flows that we're ultimately going to be achieving or improving are really going to come out of the UX UI audit. So these are sort of like hypothesis or just a start in the right direction. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into the video. All right, so on the screen, we have our first exercise, which is the empathy map. And I did spend a true 30 minutes on this exercise, so that timestamp is true to form. And how I basically accomplished this is, well, first let me explain what this is. So the empathy map, as we mentioned, is a way to see, just based on, in this case, the user reviews that I basically took note of, or any sort of a user interview that you might be able to do, or listen to existing user interviews. You want to get a sense of how the user sees things, how they hear things, what they say or they do, what they feel, their needs and their issues. And so we're mapping these out. I took the notes from the user reviews, since this is pretty much all I have for this exercise. And then I basically mapped them down. So there are a couple of pieces, I would say, that could go, or there's a couple of cards that could go in multiple places. So when I was sort of trying to figure that out, a lot of the times you'll see that I put it on the issues, because at the end of the day, those issues are going to be things that we need to focus on with the UX UI audit. So with that said, let's go into a couple of them here. For the what I see category, one of the comments was the UI can be more engaging. I think that's really important, especially because, well, there's a lot of documentation for Jira, but their documentation, as you'll see in the next video with the UX UI audit, is very like intense. Like there's just so much just like one article was like 17 and a half minutes to read. So it's like, and that's just like, I have a tool. I used to do a podcast, so I would make sure that my outlines were nice and concise. So this Words to Time website, I was able to just like copy and paste to see how long it would take to go through that article, and that's how I found that out. But I think if the UI can be more engaging, it would prevent people from having to go to an article to read and try to get all the details. So secondly, the static Kanban makes the text too small and hard to read, which is frustrating. So we aren't really going to be doing too much with the Kanban in this project, as I'm recording this after I've already done the UX UI audit. I initially was going to be recording these back to back with the user research, but kind of telling you now in foresight that we're not really going to be focusing on this. But the feedback was basically, depending on how many swim lanes you have on your Kanban board, think of your Kanban board is like your like Trello. Think of like those kind of boards where you're dragging and dropping things from section to section. What would happen is, instead of using a horizontal scroll, it would just tighten all of the swim lanes. So if you have like 6 swim lanes on a 1440 screen, which is like a MacBook Pro, it's really hard to read both the cards, and it's hard to read the sections, like what it's called, like in review or done. So just that, it was something that I wanted to make note of, just in case that was an area that we're going to focus on. What I hear, I only put down one thing. There is a trade-off between ease of use and efficiencies. So I think the same user mentioned both of these, and I think it was an engineering manager, if I am not mistaken. Now, it's a little complicated to sort of dissect what he means. You have to interpret it, but essentially I think what he's getting at is the ease of use and the overall way to use the product don't align. Like the best way to use the product don't align. And that's kind of a problem. Like if you want to get the most out of the product, but also use it in the easiest way possible, they should intersect. Now, let's talk about a couple of things. What I feel, Jira is so slow. That's more of an engineering effort. I think there's just a lot of content that it's trying to load, and we're going to need to sort of overlook this one right now. Let's talk about ones that we actually can fix. So administration is very complicated. I have really good ideas for how to improve administration. Cumbersome setup, very similar in nature. It takes too much time to log small tickets. We're going to be focusing on that one. The UI is always changing but never improving. Can't really focus on that. Challenging to find things once they are created for, or challenging to manage boards. We're going to be fixing that. And then have to spend hours learning Jira. We're definitely going to be focusing on that and trying to make the UI more engaging. Now let's talk about things that they say and do. So need to really study the tool in order to use it. I don't want that to be the case. When I create tickets, the amount of effort and time is more than necessary. So the amount of effort and time is more than necessary. So just ease of use to create tickets. And Jira can easily lead to dead ends where you need admin assistance. I don't know if we're going to be able to fix many of those use cases, because there's a lot of different user flows, but let's see if we can cut down on any confusion. Now let's talk about some of the needs. So time tracking for tickets could help with reporting. I'm not actually going to be focusing on that one. So I'm just going to try to focus on some of these cards that we're actually going to, I'll try to read off only the ones that we would actually focus in on. So we're not going to be focusing on the other two for needs. Let's go into issues. Now, mind you, I can't focus on everything because, I'm trying to treat this like a 2-week sprint at the end of the day. Me as a designer comes in, works with the company for 2 weeks. How can I make usability better? That's the goal of the project. So new users are left feeling confused. We're definitely going to focus on that. Difficult for quick adoption. That's another one we're going to hit on. Not ideal for small teams. Another one we're going to hit on. And the reason that we're going to be hitting on that is because if I was working for Jira, would want companies that are growing quickly with the software and that can grow up with it. Loading times between screens, not going to focus on that. Editing issues, we're going to focus on. So editing issues is cumbersome. Let's see here. Offers actions that you can't actually take. That's something we're going to focus on as well. There's a lot of usability issues. I think you guys are going to be. I was really surprised. If you guys don't know, Jira is about, I think it's like close to 8,000 employees on LinkedIn, maybe like 7,300. And that tells you there's probably at least 8,000 because they're not all going to be on LinkedIn. So to find as many usability issues as I did, I was really quite blown away, to be honest. I knew that it was, as a tool that I use every day, I knew that there was usability issues, but I was really surprised. They have like, I was looking at it, like 3,000 designers in total at the company, and like of those in Jira, it looked like roughly 1,000 or 900, somewhere in that ballpark, are working on Jira specifically, which is crazy because Atlassian has like 5 different products. Difficult to find tickets. We're going to try to make that easier, but that may not be like a primary focus. Use only 15% of the fields when creating a ticket. That is really key. Really, really key. No undo option for moving things in the backlog. Another thing we're going to focus on. So those are all of the, I don't want to read every single thing, but you kind of get the gist of the empathy map. The goal is to get a sense of how the users think and feel, issues they have, needs, what they hear, what they say, what they do, just creating that empathy. So that's the first projects, or the first deliverable that we're talking about today. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments section, and I would be happy to even jump on a call with you to explain how this works. Now, let's go into the user personas. So I'm going to zoom in here. That's something that I notice when I go to edit. I don't always zoom in, so apologies on that. I know if you're watching on a mobile phone, I want to make this legible for you guys to be able to read because I know it's kind of small. So I'm going to focus on that going forward. User personas. So we created 3 different user personas, one for a product manager, one for a software engineer, and one for a software engineering manager. So very similarly, what I did is I looked back at the notes, and I also looked at the empathy map, and then I tried to map out things here on the user personas. So first things first, some of the primary user tasks that I wanted to focus on are creating epics, stories, bugs, sprints, and subtasks. So those are going to be a lot of what a product manager is focusing on in their day-to-day. There are other ones, of course, but that's why these are only the primary, not all user tasks. So some of the challenges that a product manager mentioned are that we're going to be focusing on. Having a difficult time finding tickets I created, no undo option. So that was in the last one there as well. Moving issues in the backlog is tedious and unintuitive. Basically, in Jira, there are a bunch of different really short cards, but you have to move everything super manually. So you'd have to go above the fold or below the fold, and it may take quite some time depending on how like large your backlog is. In the demo account that I'm going to be showing you in the UX UI audit, it's not even a demo account. It's just an account that I created. There's not going to be that many tickets in the backlog, but I'm going to try to show you just how annoying that process is. And then when we get to designing solutions, we're going to come up. I have like already ideas about how to make it a lot more easier to use. So let's see, what else do we have here? So steep learning curve and getting boards set up right. So like the board and settings right. Basically, I believe that the onboarding process can help with this tremendously. So I'm excited to show you how I'm going to fix that in the design process and the design research. So frustrations, hard to quickly jot down ideas for stories. This was something that ClickUp did really well. So we'll see if I can close the gap. Settings navigation is unintuitive. There was a lot of people that were saying they couldn't find things that you would think they would be in a certain area, but they're not. And I don't know if we're going to be able to tackle that specifically, but we're going to try to do something. It may sort of help with that. So let's go into some of the goals. So pristine and organized backlog. That's obviously a user. I mean, as a user, you need to have your backlog focus, but we can help from a system standpoint them feel, peace of mind to get to that point. We've mentioned UI should be more engaging before, so let's go to like logging issues quickly. Now, some of the quotes that I found that I really liked let's see here. Let's start with the first one. Cumbersome to set up workflows for issues and UX UI for creating them is not easy. Oh, it should say easy to understand. Then again, actually I did write these manually, so I think I created these in Miro, and then I just took the piece over. So if you're wondering how I created these, go to Miro. They have a template, and then you can go ahead and create yours. And then sure, you can figure it out, but it will require a lot of face palms. So when we need to change a setting, it's hard to work out where to go. I have seen, this is the quote I was mentioning. I have to say, I've never seen another app quite like Jira, which has so many different places to go in order to change very similar settings. Motivations, want to save time and be organized in our ceremonies. So as I mentioned before, the ceremonies are the daily stand-ups, which really this is not really where it's hitting. It's more of the grooming and the planning meetings that we want to be focused. And you'll notice the engineering manager has a very similar focus with their motivations. It's like want the team to be more focused working on tasks than writing them and going through them in long ceremony meetings. As somebody who goes through ceremony meetings on a weekly basis, I can tell you right now, I was just in one yesterday, and there are a lot of issues with teams getting through ceremonies quickly and efficiently when they're trying to talk about a ticket and basically point it out, try to figure out all of the edge cases. So it's really important not only for the product manager and the engineering manager to write descriptive tickets, but at the same time, it's really important that the system doesn't slow you down and it encourages you to move quickly. And on a retro, which is after you've done the sprint, we want to make sure that teams go back and look at how they performed. Like there's going to be an idea that I have to basically compare the initial point. So if it's like a 2-pointer, they'll go back. This is an optional thing that I'm going to add, and they can repoint the number to see if their pointing was off. Because that's one of the problems one of my teams is having right now, which is, are we pointing things accurately enough? And I think there is the software should be able to help with that. So I have an idea for how to fix a real life user problem that my team is facing. So goals, ticket creation, and ceremonies need to be more efficient, as I mentioned. You can see the primary user tasks are very similar. Challenges is you have to log everything to get accurate reporting. We're not going to be focusing on reporting, but the goal is to make things, logging things more efficient. And then ticket fields out of the box are unusable because the onboarding doesn't focus on what subtasks. As you kind of saw in the last video, there was a ton of subtasks, lots of different questions just to create a ticket. But the user onboarding, in my opinion, should basically help you pick what fields you care most about. So that way, when you get started, you're taken to the home screen, you can start creating issues as quickly as possible. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on. So yeah, that's basically the engineering manager. We're not going to read every single detail. You can pause if you want to get all of those details. This is the last persona. So software engineer, goals are the motivations are time saving and making sure that I'm on top of my tickets. Goals are simplifying ticket creation and ticket creation shortcuts. So Jira has shortcuts, but you'd have to dig and read through an article to find those. We'll see if I can help with that as well. So how many features and links are in my face? How many features and links are in my face when our team only uses 15% of it all? I don't know if that's the greatest way to phrase that sentence, but it would be great if you could reduce the amount of clutter for your team. That's where onboarding is going to become really critical. So these are basically the user personas. I'm sure you've created them before. If not, I'm hoping that this is a good structure of like what things you can put on your user personas. Some of these ideas were already in the Miro like template, and then I came up with a few on my own. So feel free to use these as you would like, and let's go on to the next one. All right, so user problem statements. This is another one I spent a true 15 minutes on. I wanted to just create a couple of user products or user problem statements. So I went over this in the intro just to kind of remind you. The user problem statement, your goal is to try to figure out what are the problems that I can associate to features to make sure that we improve the product. So a specific user persona is having an issue. What are features that I can come out with to make sure that they don't have that same issue going forward? So let's talk about the first one here. So I'm a product manager. I'm trying to quickly add tasks to my backlog, but adding tickets breaks up my flow and thought process because I have to fill out fields that are required to stay organized. So what I am trying to say here on behalf of the product manager is oftentimes you have to fill out certain fields in order to stay organized and not lose things in your backlog. But what that does is it takes you out of the mindset of the actual issue itself. So if we can make it so that they can stay organized but fill out as little amount of tickets as possible, that would be the win-win situation. There is some filtering to make this a little easier where you don't actually have to fill out a ticket. We'll get into that in the UX UI audit to stay organized, but I don't want to jump the gun there. I just think that it's really an issue that if you have to fill out a ton of fields just to basically get everything organized. Next, I'm a software engineering manager. I'm trying to make our ceremonies more time efficient, but there are too many clicks just to story point. This is definitely an issue because you have to click into each ticket several times just to log the story points. So there's going to be a grooming mode, and that will definitely cut into those clicks and the time that it takes. Lastly, I'm a product manager. I'm trying to move tickets around in my backlog, but I often can't find tickets because I forgot to fill out fields, and I hate having to drag them manually where I want them to go because it forces me to have to be perfect with my drag and drop. There actually is no undo functionality. Now, it's pretty easy to find the ticket because it stays highlighted in blue, but nonetheless, it shouldn't be. You shouldn't have to like scroll your entire page just to get it to where you want it to go. There should be a lot less. You want to eliminate as much manual error as possible in the UI. So that's an area where we're going to be focusing. So these are the 3 user problem statements that I focused on. As I mentioned, I spent 15 minutes on it. What you can simply do if you want to do this exercise on your own is notice I didn't do all 3 of the user personas. I didn't do one per. I just wanted to focus on the 3 that I felt like were areas that I needed to focus on with the UX UI audit. So when you're doing this exercise, the goal is to use this to reference back to when you're doing like your true UX research. Well, this is your true UX research. When you're doing your design research or you're trying to find the usability issues. So that's what these exercises are for. So if you want to do this on your own, got to find a user persona, a primary user task, an issue, like a challenge, and then like a reason for why that issue is coming up. So that's how this framework works. Now let's go into the 4th exercise, which is the user flow diagram. I used FigJam. FigJam is still technically in beta, and FigJam is basically a way to quickly jot down ideas, and so that's why I think it's a great tool for this. This is the key, so you can sort of understand the user flows. So whenever you see a blue, like whatever, I guess it's like a square that's got some like italicized treatment. I don't really know why they are that way, but I guess to just make distinctive shapes. Flow name and number, that's what that's going to be. This is your starting point in the user flow. This is anytime you see this is there's logic being involved, and then this is the yes or no to that logic. This is a user flow step, and then these are the lines that will basically bring everything together. So I mapped out, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, oddly enough, yeah, I think I just didn't number them right. So this is supposed to be a 4, and this would have been a 5 and a 6, and a 7 and an 8. So about 8 user flows. And then I have one down here, so 9. Although this says 10, so apologies on the confusion for the numbering, but the numbering isn't really all that important, to be honest. Oh, there's a few out here, that's why. Okay, so let's call it 10. There should really be 11 user flows that we're going to go through. So let's at a high level go through how this works. So first thing I wanted to focus on, I think there's one a couple above it maybe. Yeah, so here we go. The first one I wanted to focus on is the creating a new project. So this is basically the onboarding setup. And I'll say this actually, next week I'm going to go into this even further, because in the user flows deep dive for the UX UI audit, I took a look at this user flow. Initially, I actually thought that this user flow was pretty solid. There were, I like what you're seeing here on the screen. I like how they set this up so that they're asking a couple of questions to basically try to help you figure out what project that you want, just based on your experience and what you're looking to build and if you have a tight schedule. Now, I will say though, I did find that a lot of these recommendations didn't really change a thing. So like I skipped the recommendation before and then I filled it out. It didn't really change anything. So there's a lot of steps that are pretty much unnecessary or don't do anything. And that's where when you start digging into a user flow, you start to realize some of the pain points that are there. So at first glance, this looked really great, but then there were other similar issues with like questions that were asked, like personalization questions that didn't lead to anything. Okay, so you start on the project questionnaire, then you choose your template. These are just like the 3 templates that are recommended to you, and then they have other templates as well. So then you basically choose your template, which template. And then in this case, we choose the Scrum, which then it goes into detail. Sorry, I'm having issues here. Goes into details about like what this board actually, what it actually is. And then from there, which project type. So I set up both team manage and company manage just to see the differences. There's definitely some differences there. And I actually found that this is the question that changed the most in the back end. Once you actually log into your account, this is actually the one that changed the most, which is interesting. So in this case, we'll say company managed, and then you'll just name the project from here. So you'll name it, which will give it a key, and then you'll decide for sure if that's the template you want, if that's the type you want, and then you'll hit create project. So in this case, they do a really good job of disabling this button so that you can't go forward. But in creating an issue, that's actually not the way it is. The button, you can still click the button even if you haven't entered any information. So that's like an example of when somebody as a user said, you can do things that you're not actually able to do, or you can try to do something that you're not actually able to do. They're doing a good job here, but it's inconsistent with how they handle it in their create issues. So that's the first user flow, is the user onboarding. Let's go to another one here. This is a pretty short one. Edit issue layout. You know what? We're actually not going to be really focusing on this. Editing an issue layout is going to be in the onboarding for this, for my design. So I'm going to skip that one. And so we'll creating custom fields. We're going to bring those in and just try to basically make it so that you don't have to go through so many user flows in order to optimize the way that the product is set up and the way that your project is set up. Now, creating an epic is going to be a very similar experience to creating a story, creating a bug, creating a task, a subtask. They're all pretty similar. So I'll just walk through this one. You'll start in the active sprints empty state, which is what's behind this modal. And then you'll hit create epic modal. So the modal, you'll hit create issue, and then the create epic modal will pop up. You can then import issues if you have multiple, or just create your own. So here's exactly what I mean. These are required fields, but it's allowing you to hit create. That is not best practice for a UI. You should actually not allow a user to go forward until things are filled out and filled out correctly. That's another issue that they have, is they allow you to fill out something, hit create, and then it lets you know that there was an error. That's not another like no. Like, you don't want, that's not a good UI design pattern, a good usability. So we'll get into that. Then you'll fill out the epic details. So these are the details over here. Then there's more fields. And then I think from here, let's see here. So what do you want to create? Nope, this is a different field. So this flow ends. So all of these flows sort of tie into each other as you're building out your sprint. You fill out stories from there. Then you might have some bugs. You might fill out some tasks. And then you'll want to create your sprint, which is down below. So the way that this works, and then you also can import issues. So the way that this works is you create your sprint through creating all of your tasks. And then let's see here. I think you'd have to go over here. Yeah, so over here it's just create your sprint. I didn't put the modal to show you how this looks because we're going to be getting into it. But it's a simple, do you have any, this yes or no is, do you have any more issues that you need to create? If not, then create your sprint in the modal, which is a pretty straightforward process. However, I did find a usability issue with it as well. So that's the main use case for Jira, which is creating all your issues and creating sprints. And then lastly, editing the Kanban board. I am not super focused on this in the UX UI audit either. So I'm just going to say we'll skip this one for now. And this would be a really good example of if you wanted to really take your concept projects to the next level, do one iteration of a sprint or of work, and then do some user testing, get some feedback, and then make another iteration based on the user feedback. That will show that you really thought through the project and you took your time and you made sure that you were solving real problems. All right, so that is the 4 deliverables for this week. I really hope you guys found value in these, and I'm going to continue to do very similar sort of exercises in the next concept project. And then from there, we're not going to do another project similar to this for a few months probably. But because I've kind of written everything out and kind of know what I want to do, there's a lot of other design content series that are going to be coming. So make sure to subscribe for sure. Also, please do like the videos. It really helps me out, helps the algorithm, helps people find these videos. And I do know that these are not the kind of videos that are probably going to get searched a lot. So anything that you guys can do to help would really mean a lot. And thanks for all the encouragement. I've been seeing a lot of your guys' comments. Make sure to continue to leave those. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Join the Slack channel. And make sure to remember, It takes 10,000 hours to master a skill. So what are you guys designing today? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video.